We are ringing the bell, folks. After running all over Buffalo Sunday, rushing for a franchise record 236 yards, Le'Veon Bell is now averaging almost 162 yards from scrimmage per game. In his career, he averages nearly 120 scrimmage yards per game, which is the most in NFL history for players with a minimum of 40 games. His quarterback's showing him some love.
Quarterbacks have dominated the NFL MVP in the last quarter century almost. But with Elliott and Dallas and Le'Veon this year, could you see a running back sort of bucking that trend?
Well, I think they deserve to be at least in the conversation, at least my guy. I know what Ezekiel's done and this and that, but I'll put my vote for 2-6 any day.
Bell for MVP. Max, can Bell carry the Steelers to a Super Bowl?
No. The issue with Pittsburgh, look, maybe if it was the Kansas City Chiefs, the only one standing in their way, you look at that offense, and that doesn't exactly strike fear in the Pittsburgh defense, which, as Stephen A. Smith has pointed out all year, has been vulnerable, especially the secondary. That would be one thing. But you have high-flying offenses in the AFC, too, like the Oakland Raiders, like the New England Patriots, and Pittsburgh is too flawed a team to make it to the Super, get out of the AFC even. I thought that all year. I thought that even heading into the season. I was surprised by the odds makers and by the general public's belief, it seemed to me, and others in the sports media, how many were picking the Steelers and how good they thought the chances were, in spite of the fact that they wouldn't have Martavis. In spite of the fact that their defense was clearly vulnerable coming into the year. So the answer is no.
A couple of things. First of all, I want to get back to it because I need to correct myself. I said that Jerry Jones, last segment, I said that Jerry Jones bought it for $800 million. It was $140 million. I don't know why I keep saying $800 million. He bought the Cowboys for $140 million. But back to the Steelers. Let me say this. Le'Veon Bell can carry the Steelers to the Super Bowl. And let me tell you why. Because if Le'Veon Bell is running the ball on an elite level, then their offense is more potent, not just in terms of the points that they produce and the cushion that it provides, because then the defense can make the mistakes we know they're going to make and still find a way to win games. But it's also because it contributes to moving the chains. It will contribute to moving to chewing up the clock. And as a result, it will expose their defense significantly less. That's why Le'Veon Bell could carry the Steelers. I'm not saying it will happen because I don't believe they should be the favorites. But if the Steelers are to get to the Super Bowl, I think the biggest way, the best way, possibly the only way, is for Le'Veon Bell to be an absolute monster running the football, chewing up the clock, moving the chains, accumulating yardage, accumulating points, because all of those things are going to assist in the Pittsburgh Steelers defense ultimately being covered. And that is what I think the Steelers need to do to win. The more their defense gets exposed, the greater the chance that the Steelers will lose. Because I'm not a fan of their secondary. I don't care how they've looked over the last few weeks. I've seen enough from this secondary to know they will disappoint me and break my heart when it counts most. And as a result, I don't trust them. But I do trust that offense, especially when that running game is elite. And as long as that's the case, the Pittsburgh Steelers will be just fine.
The thing about Le'Veon Bell is he's not the kind of back that they use in terms of ball control offense. A lot of his value is wrapped up in his versatility. He's one of the best I've ever seen with my own eyes, and part of that is because not only does he run so well, but you can line him up anywhere on the outside in the slot as a receiver. He's a better receiver than most. And they've been doing that sometimes, I think, to the detriment of the offense, Stephen A., where they become so enamored with how many things he can do, sometimes they just don't hand him the ball and tell him to run it. But so, and he's an incredible player. Look, you talk about a future Hall of Famer in Ben Roethlisberger. You talk about a guy who's had maybe the best prime, or at least a prime several seasons in Antonio Brown that is comparable to any receiver who's ever lived. When you look at what Antonio Brown's done the last several seasons, that could fit into anyone's career. Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, T.O., anyone's career, fit right in. He's been that good. And yet, when they're all healthy, the best offensive player on the team may be Le'Veon Bell. He's that good, and I'm saying it still won't be enough. That defense is not good enough.
Well, the defense is definitely not good enough, but the only way for a defense that is subpar to excel is when your offense covers you. And again, not just in points, but in time accumulated. You got to remember, D'Angelo Williams is expected to be back. D'Angelo Williams comes back, and he's in that backfield with Le'Veon Bell. Remember, he filled in admirably for those first 3 games that Le'Veon Bell was out due to his suspension. So if D'Angelo Williams comes back, they're contributing to chewing up the clock, but more importantly, Le'Veon Bell is making things happen, not just running the ball out of the backfield, but catching it as well. That level of versatility, which will only buffer their offense, along with Jesse James, along with Ladarius Green, the combination of the 2 tight ends being utilized as well. All of these things contribute to chewing up the clock. And as long as you chew up the clock, and I believe Le'Veon Bell is the best way for the Steelers, Max, to go about doing that, if you chew up the clock, you cover the defense. They got fresher legs. They can get stops. They can make things happen. Not continuously, but sporadically when an offense is not accustomed to being out there because the Steelers are making things happen, that could help that defense. And I think it's the only thing that could help that defense.
The Steelers have been a 500-ish type team most of this season. They have shown, but they're going to be, as I said yesterday, they're the team you don't want to face in the AFC. That's a draw. If you're like, oh, damn, we got the Steelers now. They're a dangerous team because they have the proverbial puncher's chance. And I have rooted for some Giants teams in recent years who've had a puncher's chance and have actually won the Super Bowl. But if we're asking here for our best guesses, are the Steelers going to get out of the AFC? Do they realistically have a shot? Are they one of the 1 or 2 best chances to get out? I do not think so, and I don't think it matters how well Le'Veon Bell plays. I think they are too flawed.
I think you're looking at New England and Kansas City, and everybody else in the AFC is up for grabs.
Yeah, well,
and Kansas City can be beat.
When it's counted, Oakland and Derek Carr have been some bad boys.
No question. Let's leave it there. The Steelers have the Bengals, Ravens, and Browns down the stretch. Speaking of Cleveland, yes, Stephen A.
Molly, I just wanted to know because, we all know that you're the boss of the show. You really control things. Max and I are just living in your world.
Yeah.
You own it. Could you do a favor for me and Max, please?
Sure.
Max is looking dapper today. Finally got on a fresh-looking new shirt. Needless to say, I know I'm looking pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Could you have the people at ESPN lower the topic bar so our outfits could show even more
please.
because those topic bars actually block us, and I think it's cramping the
Stephen
style
A.
that both of us are displaying today. I'm just saying.
Stephen
I
A.
noticed the
Service to
topic bar.
sartorial splendor.
Molly,
Yeah.
I noticed, Max, don't you notice the topic bar is always there when we talking, but when Molly talking, the screen is clear?
You want to know
Did you
why?
notice that, Max?
Stephen
That's
A.
by popular
I'm just saying.
demand.
Nobody's
I'm just saying.
looking at you guys. They're all looking at the LBD I'm rocking right now, so don't worry about the
got
topic
you.
bar.
Stephen A, don't stop talking or they're going to put the topic bars over our faces.
You guys are the best.
Noise didn't just start. I mean, if we're talking outside of this noise, it's the Dallas Cowboys. There's been noise from the time I've been drafted. Not just me, everybody in this locker room really doesn't pay attention to that. Y'all get paid to do that. We don't.
Stephen A., you believing him that Dak ignores the noise?
Well, I think he's lying. I think that he has to ignore it in terms of public consumption. But privately, there's no doubt in my mind that he's paying attention to it because considering that this is a results-oriented business, considering what the NFL is supposed to be about, and what this young stud has gone out there and do, to even be in a position where he has to address the specter of Tony Romo coming back into the lineup. The reality that his owner, the man that cuts his check, clearly would prefer that Tony Romo is the quarterback in there and has basically done everything but flat out come out and say, look, I wish something happens to Dak Prescott so we could get Tony Romo in there. And some would take some of Jerry Jones's words and say, that's exactly what he was saying. There's no doubt that you can't ignore that. I think it elevates Dak. Psychologically, I think it makes him more focused, locks him in, and I think he and Ezekiel Elliott huddle together, whether it's at one of the other's crib or whatever the case may be, or when they out partying together or whatever the case may be, and Zeke is in his face. Look, man, you know what we got, right? They got Darren McFadden back up in here. He's going to look to do some things. I'm not giving up what I've got. What I've gotten and what I've accomplished, and the same needs to be said for you, Dak. And they're saying it to one another. This is what we're gonna do. Rough riders, high-end competitors, elite individuals conduct themselves that way. They might shut out the noise for public consumption. They might sit up there and tell people for public consumption. That's not what we're doing. But privately, they're like, all right, I see what's going on here. It ain't going down like that. I'm not giving up what I've gotten. And guess what? They'd be fools to do otherwise. Winners pay attention to critics who matter. And Jerry Jones is a critic who matters. Now, you might say he's the owner, he's not a critic. Damn right he's a critic when it comes to Dak, because he seems to be waiting for the ball to drop so you can justify Tony Romo being back up in there. He don't want Dak to be the man that guides the Dallas Cowboys to the Super Bowl. He wants that to be Tony Romo. Dak Prescott, if he's got any competitive soul in his body, which we know he does, there's no way that he's ignoring this. He's just telling us that because we ain't the one who cuts his check. It's Jerry Jones.
This question of whether or not, I believe, Molly, the question is, correct me if I'm wrong, whether we believe that Dak is blocking out the noise, right? He's ignoring this stuff. And that's an age-old sports argument, TV question. Do you really believe that this person doesn't hear the criticism? And the problem with that question is that it's asking for an absolute answer, and it's really a relative answer. Does Dak hear some of the criticism? Of course. You can't just pretend that you can't unhear the owner saying that he believes that the other quarterback is going to contribute on the field to a Super Bowl win this year when you're 11-2 and setting the world on fire. You can't unring that bell. You've heard that. The question is not in an absolute sense if Dak can block out the noise. The question is, in a relative sense, can he? How is he? Because all quarterbacks face distractions. Yes, there are more of them in Dallas because there's more focus on Dallas than any other NFL team year in and year out. But all quarterbacks deal with distractions on a pretty big level. I mean, the quarterback of an NFL franchise is one of the biggest stars in any town they're in. The question is not, can they block it out in an absolute sense? The question is, how do they block it out compared to their peers? Right? Is Dak better at that than most? And I would say, if you've looked at Dak Prescott so far, and I'm talking about from his first preseason game, you saw something different. You saw a guy who, it's always reminded me of Tom Brady. The poise, the preparation, the maturity, the intelligence, and even during the action of the game, he doesn't try to force it. He just takes what the defense gives him. There's a level of maturity and leadership in Dak that is beyond what you'd expect from someone with his years of experience, or not even year of experience in the NFL. And if you're asking, do I believe he's better at blocking this stuff out than others, based on everything else you've seen about him, I would say yes. Yes, he is.
Listen, the bottom line is this. Dak Prescott is in the process of being sabotaged. We can slice it any way we want to. You have a billionaire owner who is unquestionably a marketing genius and a salesman extraordinaire, who purchased the Dallas Cowboys for about $800 million, elevated them to $4 billion. They're supposedly America's team because whether you love them or hate them, you're interested in them, and that's supposed to be the definition of what America is all about, as opposed to greatness instead of mediocrity. But to play that game for just a second, Jerry Jones is the owner for the Dallas Cowboys. He cuts the check. And this man has come out publicly and all but said, I hope something happens to Dak Prescott so Tony Romo could get up in there. This ain't a bus driver we're talking about here. This dude is something special, okay? Bus drivers notwithstanding out there who could easily be offended by Jerry Jones' statement. Nevertheless, the point is, this is what he said about Tony Romo. How in God's name does that benefit Dak Prescott? And if the person who's cutting the check for you comes across as if he's wishing for your demise because he wants somebody else to be elevated, it might not affect you detrimentally. It might incentivize you, get you even more focused, and get you to perform at a peak level even more so than you're already doing. But what's inescapable and what is undeniable is the fact that Jerry Jones has made it very, very clear he don't want Dak to be that guy. I can't imagine how that's noise that Dak Prescott can completely ignore. That's impossible.
Completely. No, yeah, you're right. You can't completely, but he can do a better job of handling that than another person in his position would. And I would say,
how can he do a better job, Max? How can he do a better job than he's done?
Right, that's my point. He is, even if he can't block it out entirely, he is capable of doing a better job than others given the same circumstance. And I'm arguing he is doing just that. He's 11-2 in spite of all that noise. Look, in terms of who's cutting your check, in the NFL, if you have real value on the field, that doesn't make a bit of difference because go ahead, Jerry Jones, don't cut the check. Make him available as a free agent. Someone else will cut the check. So who signs his check should be irrelevant for Dak Prescott because he's a baller. Someone's going to cut the same check or a bigger one. In fact, if he was a free agent right now, a far bigger one. Now, yes.
He's a rookie. He's a rookie, which means that the Dallas Cowboys maintain his rights, which means that the support of the owner or lack thereof is paramount because Jerry Jones could very well cut him a check, but at the same time keep him in a Dallas Cowboy uniform since they have his rights and not necessarily play him.
Then someone else will eventually acquire him, and he will ball and make tens of millions of dollars. The point is, when you're a baller, it doesn't matter who signs your check. You are going to get checks, period. And if that guy doesn't want to sign it and doesn't pay you, then it makes you a free agent. Someone else will. I want to bring up the point about the bus driver. I want to address that point. You are absolutely right about that. The misstep that I saw Jerry Jones make, or that I heard him make so far, is when he said not just a bus driver, referring to Tony Romo, taking a shot at his 11-2 rookie stud quarterback. That was bad. And then even saying bus driver was a stupid comment because that's exactly what you want. You want someone driving the bus. You got a great offensive line. You got a great running back. You know what you need from your quarterback? A guy who's going to drive the bus, not try to do too much. And on top of that, if he can be big on third down, which is Dak Prescott, which was what Russell Wilson was as a young player, which is what Tom Brady was as a young player, you can't ask for more.
Yep.
I mean, that was a crazy comment by Jerry Jones.
Okay.
So from what this tells me, moving forward the next couple of months, we're going to learn a lot about Dak Prescott. But if you know anything about his story, he is certainly familiar with defying odds and knows how to deal with adversity. So I think he'll be able to do it moving forward with the Romo chance and the Jerry love for the former quarterback. But moving on, Dak and the Cowboys have a huge matchup with famous Jameis and the Bucs on Sunday night. That got us thinking, which guy would you want as your franchise quarterback, Dak or Jameis? Go on Twitter now. We'll share those results a little later in the show.